Good morning, I'm Frank Powers, and this is Lifestyle Tucson, the program where I speak to our neighbors, the people behind the scenes of our amazing organizations, small businesses, and nonprofits. Our friends are informing you how they serve our community, and they are here to give you updates on future projects. Let's make some new friends today. Yeah. The Scoundrel and Scamp Theatre is an award-winning Tucson-based professional theater company founded in 2016. They are dedicated to sharing diverse stories about and by historically excluded voices, as well as creating immersive, imaginative experiences for audiences of all ages in their theater located at the historic Y in the 4th Avenue shopping district. Their collaborative environment facilitates inquiry and inclusivity with the goal to inspire empathy and encourage discourse as it celebrates the illuminative power of the theater arts to help us dream, question, and forge connections with one another. And scene. Oh, gee, what a mouthful. It's a good thing that I'm reading off a script, because today I'm joined by a physical comedian, theater playwright, and performer of the Scoundrel and Scamp Theatre, artistic associate, Wolfe Bowart. Wolfe, welcome to Lifestyle Tucson. It's true. Hold it down, everyone. Hold it down. Hold down the applause.
That's the applause. Thank you.
Welcome to Lifestyle Tucson.
Thank you, Frank.
Heck yeah. So I've been excited to talk to you for a little while because you've been on my radar for a bit and I didn't even realize it. I got the recommendation to get you on here from Heather Wolpern, who used to be the host of The Business Of, and now she has her own podcast called Wander and Muse. Go check it out over there on all the podcast places that you can go, over on YouTube as well. But also a few months ago, I was able to interview Friends of Tibet, and I got a voicemail from Peggy Hitchcock, and guess what? It turns out that's your stepmom. I had no idea until this morning when I was remembering. I'm like, where did I hear the name of the WoBo show before? But isn't that great? That's what your mom said. I wish my mom talked about what I do like that.
It's good to have she's a networker, you know. It's great to hear her pumping the show. But she was president of the Arizona Friends of Tibet for years, and is a great community, connector. So that's really lovely that she's hustling.
That's right. She's taking care of business for you. And again, I'm really excited by that because when I did more research about you, again, listeners of the show might know that I'm a fun, wacky cartoonist. I like to go out. I'm a performer. I like to do a lot of fun stuff around town and even getting more involved with being a character and learning what that is to really kind of transform. People talk about like Johnny Depp when he disappeared and comes back, and then he's Captain Jack. And he is that character. He knows what Captain Jack had for breakfast last week. And that's kind of what it is to like really get a character in you. And I love performing and even doing it more out in the world. I'm becoming braver with it because when I was a little kid, this is what I talk about on the show. Like I used to have stage fright, and now I'm kind of the most outgoing guy in town because I kind of kept working that muscle. I didn't want to be the nerdy kid that I would see in every sitcom that everyone's like, well, you'll be a loser. You're destined to be. So I started to really come out of my shell and perform and do what I can to be the class clown. And Jim Carrey had come out, and you try to emulate your heroes. But performing arts and all of this stuff is something I've always just envied. And then to find out more about you and your history with circus arts and what you grew up in, tell me a little bit about what it is for you when it came to like growing up and discovering what it is to be a performer and why you love what you do.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's interesting because I had a lot of freedom as a kid to be who I wanted to be. And I grew up in Tucson, Arizona. Tucson was a big desert at the time. I mean, I always say River Road was a dirt road. And you can tell if someone's of a certain age because they remember that the River Road was this dirt road. And I grew up out on River in Sabino when it was just cactus. And so I had a lot of freedom running around and getting into trouble and staying out of trouble. And that gives you a lot of time to think and be in nature and hike and be creative. I mean, I had a workshop in the desert, so I did a lot of found object junk art, as we might call it. And I also was into juggling and magic and acrobatics and things. And I came from a family of creatives. My grandfather was a painter, abstract expressionist. And my siblings have gone on to be artists of different sorts. And my grandmother was a photographer. My mom's a painter. And my dad was a writer. And so the arts, there was a language in the family of arts. But as far as circus arts, they were always a hobby. I juggled. I really enjoyed juggling because it was the eye-hand coordination. Riding a unicycle was just an odd skill I enjoyed doing, like riding a bicycle, but one wheel. And it gave you all those things were sort of there to do, and I never really thought of them as a career choice. They were just things that you do and you did and you practiced, like doing soccer. Those were my sports. A bit of gymnastics, slack rope, wire walking.
Oh yeah,
a lot of those circus arts. Magic. I was a magician. We had Alexander's Magic Shop back in the 70s in Tucson, and dressing up in as Planet of the Apes in Planet of the Apes mask and going to the newly formed Park Mall or Elcon Mall and terrorizing people and getting kicked out, and Sabino Canyon, and driving around dressed as I think his name was Galen from the Planet of the Apes, the lead character, Roddy McDowell.
Yeah.
And reading those monster magazines and all those things. So I had the language of performing and physical comedy, and I look back at Super 8 movies that we shot back then, and we were already doing it, but I never really thought it was a career choice. It was something we did. We made these crazy, influenced by Monty Python, very odd short films and paper animation. We cut up magazines and animate them and do stop animation, like zooming down the road with no car, just sitting there.
Right.
And then, frame by frame by frame.
I remember when my dad got a movie camera like that, and one of the first things we did was we made the shoes walk up the steps by themselves because of the pause button. And like being on some of the beginnings of that technology when I'm a kid was fun to watch my dad experiment with it. But to hear you actually kind of being out in the world and doing some of the stuff that we see people do nowadays, that's what TikTok's all about. That's what life's all about. Some of what I was talking about before, where you're kind of encompassing a character. Like I started doing this thing a little bit ago where I play Scrooge. And he's modern Scrooge. He collects Bitcoin and he's an idiot, but he's always on the verge of all this modern technology. And it's become this great parody I've been doing for like 5 years where now I really know the character. I just did this whole holiday season in all the airports when I traveled and everything as Scrooge. And it was so funny because the thing that's funny about that is all you got to say is bah humbug and everyone knows exactly what you're doing. And it was a riot to do that. And that was something that I couldn't do last year. Like I was able to yet again kind of come out of my shell even more and find that performance and have fun messing around with people, putting on a funny mask and doing that sort of thing. It's really freeing. If you've ever had a friend, I don't know about you, but I have a gorilla suit. I don't rent, I own. And when it comes to that, if you've ever had a friend that's not typically a performer, which we all have, as outgoing guys like us, when we're surrounded by what I call normies, when they put on a mask, like a gorilla mask, all of a sudden you watch it come out. You watch them become a completely different person. They start acting like a gorilla. And it's like, this is my stuck-up librarian style friend, but in a mask, fully engulfed and no one can see your identity. It's a type of freedom. And I see the same type of freedom when people put on a puppet, right? And that's something that happens down at the Scoundrel and Scamp Theaters. There's a lot of puppetry going on down there. We'll get into some of that. You do stuff with Red Herring Puppets, and they're a great group. I love them. I'm a big fan of Roby. I see them all over the place. Mm-hmm. But that's a big part of all this stuff is watching the freedom that comes out when you are performing, being character, being in a way masked when you're either dressed as a gorilla or when you're got a puppet on your hand.
Yeah, I really hear what you're saying. I mean, I'm looking at you. You're an artist. You're an illustrator. You're a comic artist, and you have chops. So you spend a lot of time developing that. And yes, AI can do something. Yes, we can generate things. Because we have iPhones and we're now all photographers, we're now all filmmakers, we're all now making music. And I really support that as a creative myself. I support that in all of us in society. But I keep coming, and the more I teach, I keep coming back to this, that there are a certain numbers, and I don't want to say pay your dues, but a certain number of hours of repetition of over and over and over again for you to become the illustrator that you are. It didn't come overnight. It was many, many hours. And I look at that and I think, when you say we can put on a mask and we can be free or put on a puppet, I so support that in the world. And at the same time, hand in hand is the repetition of doing that skill over and over and over and over and over and over again.
Yep. I tell kids 10,000 hours. We all know that rule, and when they guess it, they're always far off. They can't believe it's 10,000. And as I was saying before, I was the quietest kid ever. That's why I can draw. Yeah. Because those years when I got very introverted from second grade till about eighth grade, I focused on that because I was alone. I was a quiet kid, went to private school. The neighborhood kids teased me, bullied me. So I'm inside. And my sister was my hero and she could draw. So then I started doing that. And then I kind of surpassed her. And we talk a lot about identity stuff these days and identity politics. And that doesn't always have to be about sexual identity or anything like that. It can be about, like, I realized I was the art kid, the way that someone realizes they're the cheerleader, someone's the jock, someone's this. In high school and in school, there are roles. And when I discovered that I had the role of I'm the art kid and started leaning into it, it really gave me some identity, all that confidence that I kind of needed. And then I started to pour it into the performing arts aspect of real life too, you know, and that's where I mentioned Jim Carrey, where you have someone that's like, that's what I want to be like. So you do a little bit of emulation, you do a little bit of copying, and then you start to find your own rhythms, your own jokes, your own tones. And that's what happens. That's why nowadays, as a 40-year-old, people are like, you kind of remind me a little bit of Jim Carrey when I first met you. But it's not like they're like, oh, you're just that guy, where it's almost like, you know, weird. And that was a good outlet for me. And that's what I think is also great about the theater. And that is that you have a lot of opportunities for classes, both for adults and classes for kids. So let's talk a little bit about some of the Scoundrel and Scamp Theater, because there's a lot going on and you got a lot of great programming. The first thing that I do want to talk to you about is the WoBo show, which I realize what it is because of your name. Yeah. So Wolfe Bowart's WoBo show, right? There you go. So what is the WoBo show? Tell us all about it.
Well, I wanted to challenge myself to create a new show every month. And it turns out it was a challenge.
I believe it.
Granted, I have pulled little sections from other shows because I have a body of work that we toured the world with. But I'm working with a great young woman who's 19. Her name is Xochitl Martinez, and she's really enthusiastic and has a lot of sort of innate chops on stage. And she can play the straight man, if you will. In a comedy duo, there's often the Laurel and Hardy, or even Chaplin will have the cop playing a straight man, and which gives me the freedom to be the goofball. So in the traditional European physical theater, or clowning as they call it there, we don't use the word clown much in America because they have knives, some of them, and they come out at Halloween. But in Europe, you can use the word clown still, and there's the red clown, which is the goofball and the wiggly, the Jim Carrey type. And then there's the white clown, who's more in charge and more serious and the boss and higher status. And what's great is that in this show, in the WoBo show, Sochi, each month there's a different show. Each month we throw everything away and create a whole new show. And she can play that straight, the white clown, and I can be the goofball. And also, over the years, I've fallen in a garbage can and climbed in a giant balloon and done back flips and dive rolls and things. And now at 19, she can do all those things and loves it. And so I'm really excited about this working with a younger person on stage. Also, the challenge of creating new work and having the platform to fail. Knock on wood, we haven't failed in my eyes yet, but you never know. Come and see us fail. No, the potential as an artist to fail is not built into society anymore, and built into our work, because we're trying to be better than the last thing we did. Mm-hmm. And what's great about the WoBo show is that the audience comes back each month. I mean, we sell out each month. And we have so far, and they come back. They've seen everything before, so we're building on this body of work. So they kind of get to know our relationship, the characters, and we might learn a skill. We might spend the whole month learning a particular skill, like juggling plates or hat tricks or something that we didn't know before. And now, and we put it in the show, and then we may never use it again. And that is that sort of journeyman, master mentee kind of, old school way of work that I miss. And I've sort of challenged myself to do that, to say, look, here's a platform each month to do that. And they're family friendly, and there's magic, and there's acrobatics, and there's hand shadows, and there's found object puppetry, and there's all these things that you might see in circus or in the visual theater arts. And in Europe, these things are not that they're more commonplace, but we have the language for it more when you're speaking to theater people in Europe. Visual theater can mean dance or puppetry or things that don't use primarily voice. And physical comedy is what it sounds like. Like Jim Carrey would be a physical comedian, and Jackie Chan might be considered a physical comedian on top of his acrobatics and his martial arts. But so we use all those things, those, stage illusion and shadow puppetry and film interaction. We walk in and out of movies and things, and we use them to tell whatever story we're telling on whatever given time. And it's family friendly. It's non-verbal primarily, so that we're able to do these kind of shows historically. I mean, I've been touring for 20 years, I guess. And we were able to go all over the world doing these kind of shows. So because English isn't the first, English isn't hanging on the English or a language, any verbal language for that matter.
That's wild. I want to talk about some of your world travel. The next WoBo show is actually going to be February 3rd at 2 p.m. And then the next one after that is Saturday, April 6th. And then you got Saturday, May 4th. It happens every Saturday. First Saturdays of the month, it looks like. So make sure you're doing that. And May 4th, that's always a good, exciting day for any nerdy fun thing. Maybe we'll see if the Force is with them on that day for a fun show for the WoBo show. Even real quick, going back to some of that practice and some of that getting things done, what you're doing here is such an amazing workshop challenge for yourself. Because one of the things about those hours we're talking about to become an expert is you got to throw a bunch of at the wall and see what sticks. You, in a way, have to just kind of get it out of your system. There's a lot of bad ideas in the beginning, and there's a lot of random ideas throughout, but every once in a while, you got to dig through all the dirt to find diamond. And that's the only way you're going to do it. I discovered that getting through when I was doing Scrooge stuff. Like if you look at the early stuff, it's so stiff. Like I realized that Scrooge's acting style was that of a wacky inflatable tube man. I didn't move my legs at all because I'm just so bad at this. And now, look at that. And I can do more. I can go out in the world. There is so much that you get just from putting in all that practice to try. And that's what I love when I was learning about the WoBo workshops and how your version of what it is to workshop something new every single month. And what a gift that is to an audience to be able to go, we know where we're going the first Saturday of every month and it's new. We can trust that it's fun. It's family friendly. It's exciting. That's like a big deal. It's been on my list to go attend, and I'm going to try to make sure that I make the next one, if not the one after that, if not all of them, because it's right up my alley anyway. We'll see if I can get involved at some point, because the other thing I talk about on this show, mentors. What you're doing for that young lady is huge. And the leaps and bounds that she's making at age 19, you're not going to read that in a book. You need that from a mentor, a guy like you that's world traveled, that can literally speak from experience, go to a different sports analogy, having a batting coach. Oh, no, you don't got to practice another 1,000 hours till you figure this out. I'll show you if you flick your wrist this way, it'll change. And that's what you're bringing to some of these youth and some of these other people. And you even got adult acting classes down at the Scoundrel and Scamp Theatre. So go on the website, everyone listening there. And there's thousands and thousands of you listening that need to go get involved and get out of your shell, because you can go visit scoundrelandscamp.org and you'll find out all of the opportunities that are there. And there's even a lot of volunteer opportunities. And I always talk about that and how people can get involved with the theater and with anything by volunteering. Get involved with set building, light crew, costume building, stagehand, usher, all these general event options, and even sign language interpreting. Do you know how to do sign language? They're looking for help. So go on the website. There's a tab where you can volunteer and go get involved with the Scoundrel and Scamp Theatre, because you definitely want to get involved. There's some other great plays and other fun things that they do throughout the year. Let me just ask you just some other open-ended questions, because we've been talking for a little bit here and we're running out of time. I was listening to your interview with Heather a little bit ago, and how you used to travel a bit, going all over, performing all over. COVID put a little bit of a stop to that. Now you've been doing a lot of stuff here locally, just in Tucson. How much have you enjoyed your involvement in the theater and what you've been able to do when you're focused on kind of staying in one spot here in Tucson, and what you've been able to build?
Well, those big touring shows, one, they were large productions. I mean, they were one-man shows, but the set, one of them was the Man of the Seesaw, so it had a giant rocking iceberg. And if you go to spoontree.com, you can see videos of some of these things. But it had a giant set that was sort of like a pop-up book made of ice, or looking like it was ice, and hydraulic jacks in it, and all these different things that moved. And
wow.
Polar bear popped up in a dream, and owls, and all these incredible things. A seal that popped up all the time out of the iceberg. So there was a lot. And it took about a day to set it up in whatever venue we were. So I remember in Hong Kong on New Year's Eve, we had finished the show, and they were trying to load the set out of a window, and it doesn't go out of a window. It's a giant iceberg. We have a video of it on someone's phone that the whole thing fell, like 10 feet and then caught on a rope. And so this giant iceberg was falling out of the sky and then swinging across, and everyone's screaming and laughing and screaming, and no one was around. No one could get hurt. But when you're dealing with these giant props and all this stuff and all these bells and whistles and a large crew, we would tour with only 4 of us, but then we would use maybe 10 people in the venue. So you're dealing with 20 people a night, and you're setting up these shows, sometimes a one-off. So you're doing a one-night stands around the world, but often you would at a week. So that part, I want to say I don't miss it, but I miss that. I do miss that sort of the tour, the seeing people laugh around the world, the way that different audiences laugh or respond to a joke or a bit or a visual image in the show, and then to be in another country, day after day after day, and travel, and the expat essentially, and it feels. I mean, people have said this to me, and I kind of roll my eyes, but there is sort of a goodwill ambassador thing that was happening with those tours. Like you'd see, oh, he's an American, oh, he's funny, and these shows are compassionate and they have a lot of heart. And it felt like making people laugh was a really good thing to do. So I'm still touring when we can take the shows out, but to be able to take all that energy and put them into a 100-seat theater in Tucson, where I live and where I grew up, it feels like coming home, and it feels like a very special sort of about time for me. Like I've never really performed much in the States. I've always performed overseas. We would do the shows here, mount them, and then take them on the road. So they'd get a sort of a test run in front of an audience here, but I never really was able to run a show. And so with the WoBo show, to be able to develop that audience and develop the family audience, like, have a 6-year-old and the grandparent, and they're all laughing and discussing parts of the show or how a magic trick is done or what something meant in the show, is very rewarding. It feels good to be part of a community.
Community is the best part about Tucson, because this place has it. I always call Tucson, it's the baby bear's porridge. It's just right? You get a lot of stuff done here. And again, how many people were talking to me about you before we finally get to meet today? I often ask a question, and I'll ask you 2 versions of it. If you had one wish for your theater there, for the Scoundrel and Scamp Theater, what would that wish be?
It's happening. People are coming, and they're returning to the theater. They're returning to see live theater and support live theater. Live theater is like nothing else. You can look at a painting on the wall or play a piece of music. A symphony plays a piece of music, and that's interpreted in the moment. But live theater has all those elements, and then it's gone in an instant. So each night you're seeing a different work of art. Yes, there's interpretations, and yes, there's some of the same elements, but each night you're experiencing it with a group of people that are different each night, and that's an incredible, very unique form of art. And so my wish is that it continues and people support the art, support the performing arts. And the Scoundrel and Scamp in Tucson. And the building itself is interesting because it's the old historic Y. I think it was built in 1930. And in the front is, on University there is the Rogue Theater. And then there's all kinds of different businesses in the building. And then the Scoundrel and Scamp is on the south side of the building. And has its own dedicated parking lot in the back there. And it's an incredible old piece of art, the building itself. So, it's a destination, which is really great too. And then there's so much to do, down that area too. So
absolutely. If you haven't gone down there in a minute, because sometimes I talk to people in town, it's like they haven't made their way down to 4th Avenue, and they'll be like, I haven't been down there in a decade, or I haven't gone to the street fair in 11, 12 years. It's like, make your way back downtown. Downtown has changed quite a bit, especially even Congress area and some of that stuff. Don't be afraid of the bus station. I always got I used to own a business right across the street. It's fine. It's a lot of class, a lot of fun, a lot of unique things happening, a lot of arts, a lot of open galleries, art walks, fun, free entertainment, tons of good entertainment that's worth paying for and worth supporting. And Scoundrel and Scamp's putting on tons of stuff. I'll give you a bit of some of the shows, the schedule in the recap coming up in a little bit, but I still want to ask Wolfe another question. Maybe it's personal. I want advice for just not only me, I've come a long way as far as I've come, but for others out there like me that are still a bit more introverted, are still trying to break out of their shell. Give some advice, or what advice can you give to guys like me, gals that are out there that are just, they want to break through and be more performative or be more outgoing or just go for it, whatever go for it is. What advice can you give someone? Because I know that you've been afraid to do something. Then you're like, all right, and you suck it up and you do it. And then it's easy to do it again. It's easy to do it again. Give me some advice. Give us all some advice from a guy who's obviously done it, has traveled the world, and has kind of conquered some of the demon of maybe embarrassment.
Yeah, I mean, I think about people who have stage fright and, like you said, not hiding, but incorporating a character or the mask, or the metaphoric mask even, or a puppet or something like that. But also, which is a great idea and a great way to dip your toe into the world. But also know that the audience wants you to win. They love you already. They support you already. And doing less. Often we and I'm guilty of this. We want to do more. We want to be more. We have an agenda. But being present on stage, or if your stage is public, street performing, or happenings, which it sounds like your Scrooge character is a bit of a happening. Mm-hmm. Even doing public street theater, there's a way to just be present, to be honest, to be open, and to connect, and to know that the audience wants you to win, and they already love you and support you, and they want you to succeed. So you've already got that going. So trust it.
That is actually good advice for comedians as well, because when you go, the audience at a comedy show came to laugh. So don't be afraid. Try that open mic. Go for it. Just go for it. The more you do it, the easier it gets. And it's repetition. It is just about that. And it's going to give you this great muscle that works not only on stage, works in the boardroom, works in a meeting, works in the world when you're making friends or even trying to get a date. When you're not afraid, you're able to do a lot. So I really enjoyed this conversation because today we made friends with Wolfe Bowart of the Scoundrel and Scamp Theatre, devoted to creating and presenting theater productions that engage cross-generational audiences in theatrical experiences that evoke thought, wonder, and laughter. Thank you for joining me today, Wolfe.
Thanks, Frank.
This was Lifestyle Tucson. Bing, bong, bing. Time for a recap. It was pretty interesting realizing that I was getting recommended him by Heather. Yeah, I met his mom when I did the interview there, and really, it's neat when things like that happen, and that's why I call Tucson the Baby Grace Porch, because the networking here is amazing, and it's amazing who knows who, and how you do get connected with like-minded folks here in town. So let me give you a bit of details about Scoundrel and Scamp. They've got classes that just started here in January, so go sign up if you want. To go get more information, you can go to their website, scoundrelandscamp.org. You can go follow them on Instagram at Scoundrel and Scamp. They are located at 738 North 5th Avenue, Suite 131, here in Tucson at 85705. Their phone number is 520-448-3300. You can sign up for their newsletter to get a lot of details on all the shows, what's going on, and their schedule of events is there. There are a ton of shows, a ton of classes. They've got even a design and tech version of their classes, which is great. Last year, they did an amazing 24/7 play festival where it was kind of like a 24-hour comic where you create a comic in 24 hours. Everybody created a play within 24 hours. They wound up at a bunch of 10-minute plays. 7 new 10-minute plays were written and performed before an audience. So we'll look and see if that's coming back later in the year, but there's a lot of stuff to go find over at Scoundrel and Scamp. Go check out their shows. Obviously, the great WoBo shows every first Saturday from February 3rd to the next one, April 6th, and then May 4th. So there's all the details for you. I'm a big, big fan of Wolfe Bowart. I'm going to make sure I go get to that WoBo show and really have a good time and enjoy it. Really, what a treat today was for me. So I want to thank our new friends at the Scoundrel and Scamp Theatre. You've been listening to Lifestyle Tucson. For more information about this program or to listen to something you may have missed, go to the Sunday Mornings page on klpx.com, kfma.com, mixfm.com, or espntucson.com. You can also subscribe on iTunes or wherever fine podcasts are being scoundrels. Follow on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Lifestyle Tucson, because I'm your BFF, your best Frank forever, Frank Powers, and toot toot Tucson, I love you the most.